So good day. Today's video I will discuss about the sulfur cycle. But before that, we'll give definition first about sulfur cycle. So sulfur cycle plays a large role in the health of ecosystem. It has an atmospheric sulfur. Ang cycles between the atmospheric and the ecosystems of the land of the ocean. So kining sulfur cycle can mag-start sa kaning volcanic eruption with weathering of rocks or the breakdown of rocks wherein it will then release through natural weathering and erosion, and then sulfur comes to contact with air, which the sulfur will be converted into sulfate. From sulfur, nahimo siyang sulfate. And then the sulfate is taken up by the plants and microorganisms, and these will converted into organic forms. And then animals, they get sulfur to the food they eat. So the sulfur will move through the food chain. So after that, the excretion and decomposition will occur and will eventually go back to the earth or sa soil. It continues loss of sulfur from terrestrial ecosystem runoff, or this sulfur will release from the ocean. In sulfur-containing compound na sea spray, ang sea spray di ay kay mao ni siya ay nang kanang inigbawd gani kay kanang mga sticky nga mo-contact sa skin, mao ni siyang gitawag nga sea spray. So in the ocean, you've got waves crashing on the beach, on the rocks, so you can get the sea spray that goes up. So sulfur is released there na dito sa sea spray, and it also gets released on the gas hydrogen sulfide, which is a metabolic high product of same types of bacteria. So here is the release of dimethyl sulfide, which is H2S. You get the sulfur dioxide being released by volcanic eruption, as well as a sulfur being released from sea spray. So about 95% of the sulfur enters the atmosphere from the world's oceans. Thus, the form of strong-smelling sulfur compounds like dimethyl sulfide. Then, our breakdown products of organic molecules made by the phytoplankton. The smelling compounds are lifted in the air by wave action. They contribute to the smell so associated with seaside air. Ecosystems do naturally releases sulfur, but human activity really increases the sulfur emissions in the atmosphere. When we burn fossil fuels like ang oil o ang coal, we introduce sulfur dioxide into the air. In the atmosphere, this gas winds up combining with oxygen and water to become sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is the main contributor to acid rain. In the atmosphere, sulfur compounds do return to land in dry particles or dissolve in rain. Too much sulfuric acid in the rain, like I just said, is the main cause of acid rain. It lowers the pH of soils, of lakes, or in rivers. It damages organisms and it reduces the productivity of plants. So what we see is we've got all the sulfur down here in soil and in rock, and that sulfur is a nutrient for plants, so it gets taken up by the plants, by those plants and producers, which then gets eaten. So this dye, or you have here waste product from animals that go back onto the land. They break down, they decay, and then it goes up to the sulfurs that's going to reduce the productivity of those plants, so you're basically damaging the bottom portion of that food web. Some of that sulfur that falls back to the earth again is taken up by, and it's cycled through organisms in the both terrestrial or ocean ecosystem and communities. Sulfur is required by all organisms because it is component of some of the amino acid that we have inside of our bodies. Kaya ang amino acid mao na siyang kuan sa atong bodies. So sulfur does eventually fall back to the bottom of the ocean in sediments. So naturally, processes that break down rocks can also be released again through volcanic activities. So natural, these nutrients that we've been talking about, sulfur does cycle not only through the atmosphere, but it can also cycle through terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem pretty quick. So that's it. That's it for today's video, and I hope that you've learned something about this. Thank you.